1995. Okay, first things first, this video is going to contain spoilers for both The Whale and Angus. I'm not certain I would have done this spoiler warning if it were just an Angus video, as you have had literally the length of my entire life so far to see that one. But I will warn you about The Whale because that movie is pretty new and pretty in theaters and stuff, and 80% of the advertising has been Brendan Fraser adorably staring blankly in the distance like Kirby in the moments before swallowing your house and all your possessions. Speaking of swallowing, you can also consider this section a content warning, cause we're gonna be talking about fat today, and it's one of those things where sometimes you just don't want to deal with it today. So if you're working through some things in your life right now and don't want to subject your mind to this weighty subject, please don't. Take care of yourself. Now, without further ado, it's time to introduce the topic of big boys. Now, when I say big boys, I'm not talking about protein, even though it's always nice to put some respect on Zangief's name. I'm talking about rotund big boys. Now, the way cinema, and particularly the Hollywood/Hollywood adjacent industries depict this particular brand of largeness is often a tad complicated. And this video is fortunate enough to have the privilege of leaving the ladies out of the conversation, because that seems to be a different kind of puzzle game from my perspective. It's really odd, but unsurprising that the big boy conversation at least gives off the illusion of being a socially safer conversation to have. Like, we really need to let cinematic big girls be big girls. Cinematic life would be much more interesting if there were a bit more big girl biodiversity to explore than Lizzo Land, John Travolta in a wig land, and Precious Land. I don't even know what other examples to include, because even deciding what big girls count as a big girl is a rhetorical booby trap. That's how precarious this whole conversation is to navigate, and rightly so, to be honest. See, I'm already getting sidetracked. I promised I'd talk about big boy narratives, so I'm gonna talk big boy narratives, and I'm a strong believer in case-by-case basis, even when making comparisons, and especially for weighty subjects, so I'm gonna outright reintroduce the narrative competitors before I derail myself again. In the left corner, we have our 1995 golden boy. Looks like his mama, Kathy Bates, has given him some graham crackers and a soda, and his grandpa, George C. Scott, is ready to help him come of age in this cruel, cruel world. Angus! And in the right corner, a gay man is reading a silly essay about Moby Dick, while his outcast of a daughter, Sadie Sink, causes a ruckus because he left her when she was 8 years old. Lady True just handed him a bucket of fried chicken, and he's so large his heart is overworked and underpaid. So what else are you gonna do at this point? The Whale! First, let's discuss the differences between these films genre and intent-wise, because it's important to get that out of the way before calculating which one has the cooler narrative that makes better sense. Angus. Angus is a coming-of-age film. A coming-of-age 90s dramedy, to be precise. It's that wonderful sweet spot of silly serious that makes teachers feel safe enough to play in schools, but has enough of that edge for some teachers to be like, I can make them write a short essay about empathy because this is health class and we're on the mental health unit. It's also a movie for the whole family. Why do I say that? Everybody's best friend Kathy is here, and she's always evil, or adorable, or both. And that wily scoundrel George C. Scott is also here, so when the family shows up at the theater, yeah, no fun mangoes show up. They get to be like, Kathy, I'm here to visit. The closest thing to that kind of thing nowadays is like Top Gun Project M, but even that's a stretch because all they did was have some coupons at Applebee's. Now, The Whale is a whole other beast. It is rated R. Why? Because the adults are acting like teenagers who weren't raised right. I'm serious, that's basically the criteria for rated R movies. Were the adults raised right? No? R. So you can already expect a fair amount of I learned it from you with a side order of truck. It's one giant trauma parade, okay? It's a Lifetime movie, and I'm not even sure I mean that in a mean way yet. This flick has also been, touted as the glorious return of Brendan, because Hollywood absolutely loves a Jesus narrative when the truth is actually a pagan immortality narrative. He never left me. I never forgot him. Dude's as everlasting as police officer Elmer Fudd in Looney Tunes Back in Action, the video game. If you've played it, you know. Anyways, I don't want to get sidetracked, because this man's career, this man's Valerie Cherish moment is a whole other video for a different channel that's a whole separate narrative from the whole movie, because the movie? I don't get it. The whole idea is that, spoilers ahead, I warned you, this dude's life-threatening weight is a physical manifestation of the trauma of his lover dying. He left his wife and his 8-year-old daughter. She was 8, a small 8-year-old child when he left her. Sadie Sink yells at this man 4 times in the whole movie, being all but you left me when I was 8. Even her mom gets in on the action. She was 8, Harold. I felt like I was going to be quizzed at the end of the movie, question 1, how old was he when he left her? 8. He left her when she was 8. 8! I really hope Sadie Kitchen Sink doesn't get typecast into being a trauma woman all the time. I want her to kick people. She's funny when she kicks people. Where was I? Oh yeah, the trauma. Ronald, I don't even know his name. For a movie that is allegedly depicting a bleak reality that happens in the real world, just ask TLC, it seems pretty unrealistic to have none of the characters have last names. It might be a this could be anybody pretentious technique, but Angus characters have last names, and they're arguably relatable by design, so you can't be bothered to fully name these characters even though this is supposed to be a specialized, specific situation that happens in specific ways to specific people. Angus 1, Whale 0. Now we need to make a comparison in regards to a nice little thing we like to call spectacle. It's an undeniable scientific fact that culturally we see big boys as spectacular. Buddha, Carbuncle, Bob, Rufus, Winnie the Pooh. We like the big boys. Unfortunately for the big boys, we also like commodifying the human body in service to the judgmental societal gaze, and arguably, both Angus and the Whale intend to combat this fearsome and fundamentally unjust societal witnessing through their respective narratives. Now, of course, Angus and, Charlie. It's Charlie. I had to look the name up because it's so basic and unimportant and non-specific. They are at significantly different life points, okay? Angus is trying to survive high school. Charlie's physical ailment is literally gonna kill him. Tick tock, what about my estranged daughter who I left when she was 8? That said, I'm not gonna go so far as to say the stakes are lower for Angus than for Charlie. In the average American public school system, until you're out of it, school and school accessories make up most of the walking hours of your entire life. Additionally, what a person perceives as most important is directly informed by the amount of life they've lived. In real life, why are the concerns of the children so easy to dismiss so often? Well, the older folks have already lived past that point, so surviving high school is no longer a top priority for them, and they've leveled up to, surviving the IRS. But that doesn't mean that the surviving of high school isn't a priority for our boy Angus either. He shows up every day and is made a spectacle of. They hung his underpants on the flagpole. If that kind of cruelty isn't a spectacle, I don't know what is. As for Charlie the Whale, the movie tries to fight the evil society gaze by allowing the literal audience to choose whether to use it on him or not. No, really. The movie goes out of its way to show the spectacle of the chicken bucket, the spectacle of this man taking off his shirt to shower, the handful of incidents of the poor guy giving in to his consumptive impulses when he's feeling low. We see this, but we not once get a conversation about how things got this way for Charlie. Hold your horses, stop it, stop it, stop it. Don't you dare try to use the death of his boyfriend as the how of the situation. That's the why of the situation. And good Lord, they made sure to keep banging that point with a sledgehammer. It's almost like there weren't any other aspects to talk about because the character is so weak and underdeveloped that somehow this literal English teacher is incapable of having any specific methodical thoughts about his physical journey. You know what kind of moment would have been super moving and stuck the dramatic knife in? A moment where Charlie uses his big English teacher brain to methodically talk about the first time it physically hurt to stand. Oh, but he's too embarrassed to talk about that. Well, the movie wasn't too embarrassed to open with that first scene the way it did. It's littered with personal moments all over, but suddenly he's too embarrassed to share the personal thoughts. He has to be driven into a tantrum by homophobia in order to speak his English teacher mind? The whole point of a drama of this sort is to get the opening up of a difficult mess of a personal reality. We get zero windows into Charlie's life as it exists outside of his current state and the trauma. We get all the man's fear, but none of the cruelties that have historically fueled that fear. Well, shouldn't that be obvious? Is what this movie dares the audience to ask itself without even considering the fact that it is brazenly showing the spectacle of fat Charlie while refusing to apply the same amount of spectacle to the cruelty Charlie has experienced. Not the trauma, the cruelty. They are two different things, buddy. Give me the monologue about why Charlie is afraid to go to the hospital. That's what I came here for. Don't just say it in a single sentence and use some kid who works at Pizza Hut to be cute about it. It's unbalanced storytelling. If you're going to make a spectacle of a human body, you need to make the actions of the observing of the stranger just as spectacular. Okay, I need to take a breath. Whew. All right. Is it getting hot in here, or is it me? Angus is not even an English teacher, but he is a really smart kid. I can give him that. It's established in the plot. That said, even he speaks about what he sees in the eyes of those who see him. And it's important that that is spoken about, because that's the whole point. Speaking of points, 2 more points for Angus. Yes, sir, it's 3-0. One of the points is for balancing the spectacle, and the other point is for verbalizing the relevance of the societal gaze and having it be central to the actual story being told. And frankly, I want to give the kid a bonus point for being able to do this in a way that doesn't feel too heavy-handed, but no, that's going too far. So instead, he gets a bonus point for understanding film as a medium. Whoa, you can't do that. Yes, I can. Angus understands that it's a movie. The Whale is a play that they lazily slapped into movie format without thinking, maybe part of the impact of the play has to do with the audience physically being in the room with Big Charlie the entire time. Maybe our cinematography should account for this element and try to make the audience feel like they're in the room with this guy. Well, It doesn't. I felt like I was watching a Nightmare Alley man in a cage exhibit. Observe! Observe! The whale! Maybe if they actually planned around the difference of the audience experience between stage and screen, the movie would have felt more involved and less exploitative. Like, seriously, how did they not consider the implication of placing this specific character, who was written for a stage, behind a screen to be ogled at like a caged animal at a traveling ringling circus? And now, the climax. The most important comparison that can possibly be made between these two cinematic beings. The weight of the weight. Is Angus's weight a vital element of his anguishes and concerns in the plot of his respective film? Yes, unequivocally. They put his underwear on a flagpole. He's fat, and he's sweaty, and he's exhausted with high school, and he's exposed and vulnerable about it all. Dealing with that image is central to his character. Now, let's look at Charlie. He just found out he's gonna die soon and has to reconnect with his daughter's stat. Doesn't that seem a little generic? You don't have to be fat or even be a pariah to strangers to be in that situation. Well, he gained a lot of weight because his lover had a lot of religious baggage and tragically died from it all. Is the fat relevant? Well, actually, not really. Anything could have happened to Charlie as a result of this tragedy. He could have lost too much weight. He could have lost his mind. He could have gotten lost in a sea of alcohol or gambling debt. The trauma response could have been anything. Combine this with the earlier point I made about the unbalanced spectacle, and oh no, we have a well-choreographed circus act on our hands. For a character that purports the value of being absolutely truthful because that's what's compelling in the story, he sure spends the whole story not telling any of us anything about the progression of his story. Oh, he tells us why he got here all day, but never how, not even a single spoken thought about the journey. Angus actively navigates the journey. We're at 5-0 now. Am I being too mean to the whale? Well, I'm not opposed to that thought. I mean, those performances, right? Fine. I will acknowledge that everyone in The Whale performed the ever-loving hell out of those roles. In fact, those performances are so finger-licking excellent that they actively fool many people into not seeing the blatant narrative holes. I'm dead serious. We're talking about a film that spends like the entire time criticizing radical Christian thought practices and ends with Sadie Sink standing with the light of God behind her like a painting of Jesus, while Charlie miraculously stands up without using his assisting device like this is some kind of evangelical TV program. You know, the kind of miracle that the very ideology that killed his lover and caused his spiral firmly believes in. But it was performed so well that it had everybody sobbing in the theater for 5 minutes straight or whatever. There's no denying the performances. Angus has performed well too, but it's not some don't call it a comeback Super Mario Strikers knock your socks off material. So yeah, this point goes to The Whale. Final score, Angus 5, The Whale 1. Angus wins by a long shot. So yeah, that's it. I'm done. I really had to get that off my chest, and I'm glad I was able to tie it into something from 1995, because this channel's supposed to be about that year at the end of the day, you know? That was fun. I might do more modern day to 95 comparisons, but only when I need to hide a rant behind a thumbnail or something. Next time, I think I'm gonna talk about The Graveyard. What's that? It's complicated. You'll see. If you didn't like my take today, fight me. fight me in the comments right now. I may or may not be too tired to fight back, but there's no harm in trying. Oh, and I'm Julia Chang now. Don't forget to subscribe!